Pahlavi text translated by E.W. West, Part 3, Dinai Mainogi Khirad, Clarendon, Oxford University Press, 1885, Chapter 2. The sage asks the spirit of wisdom thus: how is it possible to seek the maintenance and prosperity of the body without injury of the soul, and the preservation of the soul without injury of the body? The passage in brackets, without injury of the soul, and the preservation of the soul without the injury of the body, is omitted by K43 and is here supplied from L19. The spirit of wisdom answered thus: him who is less than thee consider as an equal, and an equal as a superior, and a greater than him as a chieftain. In L19 the text is corrupt. It has nearly the same meaning, and a chieftain as a ruler. And among the rulers one is to be acquiescent, obedient, and true speaking. And among accusers, L19 has associates, which seems equally appropriate. The two words are much alike in Pahlavi writing. Be submissive, mild, and kindly regardful. Commit no slander, so that infamy and wickedness may not happen unto thee. For it is said that slander is more grievous than witchcraft, and in hell the rush of every fiend. The word vrug, fiend, is usually supposed to mean a female demon, and is often understood so in the Avesta. Or perhaps it's like the Greek daimon, and the writers are usually male, so the anti-personal self being the opposite gender, or the other gender, or however you're going to phrase that. Perhaps because it is a feminine noun and is usually an impersonation of some evil passion. See chapter 41, verse 11. Is to the front, but the rush of the fiend of slander on account of grievous sinfulness is to the rear. Form no covetous desire, so that the demon of greediness may not deceive thee, and the treasure of the world may not be tasteless to thee, and that of the spirit unperceived. Indulge in no wrathfulness, for a man when he indulges in wrath becomes then forgetful of his duty and good works, of prayer and the service of the sacred beings, and sin and crime of every kind occur unto his mind, and L19 amidst and until the subsiding of the wrath. He, L19, has wrath, making 19 a separate sentence, is said to be just like Harmon, the evil spirit, Avestan, Angra Indio. Suffer no anxiety, for he who is a sufferer of anxiety becomes, regardless of enjoyment of the world and the spirit. And contraction happens to his body and soul. Commit no lustfulness, so that harm and regret may not reach thee from thine own actions. Bear no improper envy, so that thy life may not become tasteless. Commit no sin on account of disgrace. K43 amidst disgrace by mistake, because happiness and adornment. L19 omits adornment, celebrity, khanidi, and dominion, skill, and suitability are not through the will and action of men, but through the appointment, destiny, and will of the sacred beings. Practice no sloth, so that the duty and good work which is necessary for thee to do may not remain undone. Choose a wife who is of character, because that one is good, who in the end is more respected. Commit no unseasonable chatter. A free translation of the name of the sin, which is usually called Drayan Guyisni, eagerness for chattering. Here, however, K43 emits letter Y, so that the name may be read Drayan Galisni, chatteringly devouring, and a similar phrase is used in Artavirov 23:6. The sin consists in talking while eating, praying, or at any other time when a murmured prayer, vog, has been taken inwardly and is not yet spoken aloud. The protective spell of the prayer being broken by such talking, if the prayer be not taken inwardly when it ought to be, the same sin is incurred. See Shayast 5:2, Dadastani Danik 79:8. So that the greatest distress may not happen unto Horvadad and Amerodad, the archangels, through thee. Instead of a Mah-Respend, the archangel, L19 has Mar-Spend, the angel of righteous liturgy, but this is probably a misreading due to the fact that when the chattering interrupts prayer, the angel of the liturgy would be as much distressed as the archangels Horvadad and Amerodad who protect water and vegetation. See Shayast, chapter 15, verses 25 to 29, would be when it interrupts eating and drinking. These archangels are personifications of the Avestin Ha'ur Vatad, completeness or health, and Emeratad, immortality. Through thee, commit no running about uncovered, that is, moving about without being girded, with Christi, our sacred thread girdle, which must not be separated from the skin by more than one thin garment, the sacred shirt. See Shayast, chapter 4, verses 7 and 8. So that harm may not come upon thy bipeds and quadrupeds, and ruin upon thy children. Walk not with one boot. We should probably read without a boot, as Ae Muko and Amuko are much alike in Pahlavi. Otherwise, we must suppose that walking with only a single covering for the feet and without outer boots is meant. At any rate, walking or standing on unconsecrated ground with bare feet is a serious sin for a Parsi on account of the risk of pollution. See Shayast, chapter 4, verse 12, and 10, verse 22. Well, wouldn't it be better to just wash up before going to the ritual place in the first place and, let the ground extra clean you off on the way or something like that? In the Islamic world, one of the things that they do is they don't do lopsided things like, wear one glove or one shoe or hop around and stuff like this. I mean, it's weird enough as it is, but I mean, it's one of those things that the evil magicians do to appease the spirits. So that's probably a good reason why it's listed as something people don't do. So that thou mayest not become a captive by a habit of the demons. They know. And the demons may not drag thee to hell on account of that sin. Thou shouldest be Yehavunes, diligent and moderate, and eat of thine own regular industry, and provide the share of the sacred beings and the good. And thus the practice of this in thy occupation is the greatest good work. Do not extort from the wealth of others, so that thine own regular industry may not become unheeded. For it is said, he who eats anything not from his own regular industry, but from another, is such like as one who holds a human head in his hand, and eats human brains. Thou shouldst be an abstainer from the wives of others, because all these three would become disregarded by thee, alike wealth, alike body. K43 has homanam, I am, the whose virus of am used by mistake for ham, alike, which are written exactly like am in Pahlavi, and alike. K43 has kikvar instead of kenvar. This is doubtless a miswriting. Soul. With enemies, fight. With equity. With a friend, proceed. With the approval of friends. With a malicious man. L19 has zahissen, issue, proceedings. Carry on, no conflict, and do not molest him in any way, whatever. Unnecessary bothering is what that word meant back then. With a greedy man, thou shouldest not be a partner, and do not trust him with the leadership. With a slanderous man, do not go to the door of kings. With an ill-famed man, form no connection. With an ignorant man, thou shouldest not become a confederate and associate. With a foolish man, make no dispute. With a drunken man, do not walk on the road. From an ill-natured man, take no loan. In thanksgiving unto the sacred beings and worship, praise, ceremonies, invocation, and performing the learning of knowledge, thou shouldest be energetic and life-expending. For it is said that in aid of the contingencies, Gahisno, L19, has read Ustikan, the steadfast, by mistake, or maybe it was intentional, right? A lot of this by mistake when it comes to religious texts of the non-Muslims. It could have been intentional. And sometimes it sounds better that way, I think, like it being the continual scourge instead of the adversary, in the Bible. Among men, wisdom is good. In seeking renown and preserving the soul, liberality is good. In the advancement of business and justice, complete mindfulness is good. And in the statements of those who confess, Kustivan, reading Dado, Kuk, Barisno Iha, L19, has conveying intercession, Gadango equals Dado Gok. A small difference in reading may be a clerical error in K43. The transcript version omits the phrase altogether, with a bearing on the custom of law. L19 omits Pavan for truth is good. In the progress of business, energy is good. For there your song has unblemished. Every one to become confident therein, steadfastness is good. And for the coming of benefit thereto, thankfulness is good. In keeping oneself untroubled, Anna Irang, L19, omits path of, and it may possibly be superfluous. The discreet speaking which is in the path of or it may be the destroyer and the adversary as in L19, the last word being defective. L19 omits in the path of last word being defective in K43. Truth is good, okay. Untroubled, wrong. It might possibly be superfluous. So it could be in keeping oneself troubled, the discreet speaking, which is good? Or is it truth? Truth, good, yeah. And in the keeping of the discernments of the destroyer, L19 omits Pavan in. From oneself, employment is good. for rulers and kings, discreet speaking is good, and in L19 his friendship, assembly, good recital. Among friends, repose and rational friends, or adaptation is good. Okay, it has good, so the word that would be omitted is truth, right? So verse 73, in keeping oneself untroubled, the discreet speaking, which is in good. And with an associate to one's own deeds, the giving of advantage, succo, is good. And among those greater than one, agas, lasan, mildness, and humility are good. And among those less than one, flattery. L19 has humati, good intention, and civility are good. Among doers of deeds, speaking of thanks and performance of generosity are good. And among those of the same race, the formation of friendship, humanoi. L19 has because the reward of the good and the punishment of the vile is good. 4. Bodily health, moderate eating, and keeping the body in action are good. And among the skilled in thanksgiving, performance is good. Among chieftains, anonymity and seeking advantage are good. Among those in unison and servants, good behavior and an exhibition of awe are good. And for having little trouble in oneself, contentment is good. In chieftainship, to understand thoroughly the good in their goodness, and the vile in their vileness is good. And to make the vile unseen through retribution, L19 has preserving good language, is good. In every place and time to restrain oneself from sin and to be diligent in meritorious work are good. And every day to consider and keep in remembrance uharmazd as regards creativeness and harmon as regards destructiveness is good. And 4, dishonor, not to come unto one a knowledge of oneself is good. All these are proper and true of the same description, but occupation and guarding the tongue, pod, whose vani, more correctly temple worship, as uzdes means an erection, above everything. Well, you guard those two things, especially, right? Abstain far from the service of idols, the Avestan, Kave, Hus Ravang, the third of the Kagan kings, who reigned 60 years, and was the grandson of his predecessor, Kaius, and son of Siya Vaksh. See Bundahis 31, 25, and 34, 7, demon worship, because it is declared that if Kai Kusroi, the present lake, Urumia, according to Bundahis, chapter 22, verse 2, the feet of Kai Kusroi is also mentioned in the Bundahis, chapter 17, verse 7, and his exploits in the same neighborhood are stated in the Abanyast 49 and 50, Gosyast, verses 18, 21, and 22, Ashayast, verses 38, 41, and 42, but it is possible that the Avesta name Ka'ikasta may have been transferred to Lake Urumia in latter times. Should not have extirpated the idol temples, Ugdeskar, which were on the lake of Kakast. The 3 future apostles who were supposed to be sons of Zarathustra, whose births have been deferred till later times, see Bundahis 32:8. Their Avesta names are Ukshyad Areta, Ukshyad Namang, and Sa'ushas. Then in these 3 millenniums of Hushadar, Hushadarma, and Soshans. Okay, the notes of this page are one off, because that's the note that we just read in the other. Of whom one of them comes separately at the end of each millennium, who arranges again all L19 amidst all the affairs of the world, and utterly destroys the breakers of promises and servers of idols who are in the realm. The adversary, the evil spirit, would have become so much more violent that it would not have been possible to produce the resurrection and future existence. In forming a store, K43 amidst thy of good works, thou shouldest be diligent, so that it may come to thy. Okay. The reformatting must have put things one over. Assistance among the spirits. Thou shouldest not become presumptuous through any happiness of the world, for the happiness of the world is such like as the cloud that comes on a rainy day, which one does not ward off by any hill. Thou shouldest not be too much arranging the world, for the world arranging man becomes spirit destroying. Thou shouldest not become presumptuous through much treasure and wealth. Yeah, the worldly thing, the worldly actions and stuff for itself isn't the thing. Thou shouldest not become presumptuous through much treasure and wealth, for in the end it is necessary for thee to leave all. Thou shouldest not become presumptuous through predominance, for in the end it is necessary for thee to become non-predominant. Thou shouldest not become presumptuous through respect and reverence. Respectfulness does not assist in the spiritual existence. Thou shouldest not become presumptuous through great connections and race, for in the end thy trust is on thy own deeds. L19 amidst thy. Thou shouldest not become presumptuous through life, for death comes upon thee at last. L19 amidst thee. And the dog and the bird lacerate the corpse, referring to the mode of disposing of the dead adopted by the Parsis and Shayas, chapter 2, verse 6, and Adastani Denik 15:5, 17:17, 18:2-4. And the perishable part, Saginako, including the day of death. L19 has Ast bone, falls to the ground. During the 3 days, including the day of death, the fate of the soul after death is detailed in 114 and 194th verses. We are commenting on verse 114 here. And nights, it is also described in Vendadad 19:90-112, Hun 2 and 3, Baog 8-19, Art of Varaf, chapter 4-11, chapter 17. And nights the soul sits at the crown of the head of the body. Reciting a passage from the Gathas are sacred hymns. See Hun 2, verses 4 and 5, 3, verses 3 and 4, Art of Varaf, chapter 4, verses 9-11, and 17, verses 6 and 7. So see, if you know your scriptures or you've been part of regularly using them, then you're, this is done for you automatically on a spiritual level, you could say, right? And the 4th day, in the light of dawn, with the cooperation of Srosh, the righteous, Va'e the good, and Vahram the strong, these 3 angels are personifications of the Avestan, Sraosha, listening, obedience, Vaya or Vayu, the upper air, uncontaminated by the evil spirit, and Varapragna, victorious, triumphant. See the Eddas for a different spin on that linguistic strain. The last is more literally demon smiting. That is, smiting Varatra, the demon, the Sanskrit Vritrahan. The opposition of Astovidad, the Avestan Asto Vivotu, the bone dislocator, or demon of death, who binds the parting soul. See Vendidad chapter 5, verses 25 and 31. In later writings, such as the book of Dadar ben Dadukt, so 3 Ds in that word, he is said to throw a noose over the neck of the soul to drag it to hell, but if its good works have exceeded its sin, it throws off the noose and goes to heaven. And this noose is also mentioned in Bundahis chapter 3, verses 22, Dadastani Danik chapter 18, verse 3, Bundahis chapter 28, verse 35, has this demon as the same as the bad Va'e, but all other authorities consider them as distinct beings. It may be noted, however, that a different demon of death is usually mentioned when the soul is wicked. See verse 161, and we're still on Va'e the bad. Okay. The Avestan Vaya or Vayu, the lower air, vitiated by the evil spirit, just as the wind. Vod may be either an angel or a demon, according to its strength, makes it a refreshing breeze or a violent hurricane. So may the air be a good or evil being, according as it retains its original purity or has been vitiated by the evil spirit. That the angel Va'e is the upper air appears from its epithet Uparo Kairia, working aloft, in the Ramyast, and that is only the lower air that is vitiated by the evil spirit is in accordance with the division of the sky into 3/3, of which the uppermost is inaccessible to the evil spirit. See that at Sani Danik, chapter 37, verses 24 to 31, but this distinction between a good and bad Va'e is not made in Vendidad 5, 25 and 31, where we are told that Vayo conveys the soul when bound by Asto, Vidhotu, Frazisto the demon, and Zisto the demon. These two demons have not been recognized elsewhere. Anybody knows what those mean? Let me know. And the evil designing action of Asham, the demon of wrath, the Avestan, Eshmo, the Eva, appears to be the Asmodeus in the book of Tobit. The evildoer, impetuous assailant, it goes. K43 emits the verb, it goes, up to the awful, lofty Kinbar, or perhaps Kengbar, a partial translation of the Avestan Kinbad, GV being a mispronunciation of V or W as in Gvad for Vod, wind, and the Persian Var, translating the Avestan Vod. The Pazand writers have Kondor. It is a bridge of ever-varying breath which leads to heaven. See Vendidad 19, 100 and 101. Artaviraf, chapter 3, 1, 4, 7, 5, 1, 2, 17, 1. Bundahis 12, 7. Dadastani Danik 20 and 21, but it is not mentioned in bridge to which every one righteous and wicked is coming. Literally is a corner. You're cornered, so you can't escape. There's no escape from it. And many opponents have watched there, with the desire of evil of Asham, the impetuous assailant, and Astovidad, who devours creatures of every kind and shows no satiety. No Sikiti. And the meditation, oh, yeah, and knows no Sikiti, and the mediation of Mitra and Srosh and Rashnu. Mitro, Mithra, is the angel of the sun's light, being a personification of friendship and good faith. He is specially concerned in calling the soul to account. See Dadastani Danik, chapter 14, verse 3. And the weighing of Rashnu the just, with a balance in which the actions of men are weighed by Rashnu, the angel of justice, to ascertain whether the good or evil preponderate of the spirits, which renders no favor, who Kirai on any side. 119 has who makes no unjust balance of the spirits on either side. Neither for the righteous, nor yet the wicked, neither for the lords, nor yet the monarchs. As much as a hair's breadth, it will not turn, and has no partiality. And he who is a lord and a monarch, K43 adds rod master instead of monarch, but this is evidently an abortive beginning of the next word, Lvatman, which has been left unerased. Master monarch. Yeah, it's kind of unnecessary, isn't it? It considers equally in its decision with him who is least of mankind. And when a soul of the righteous passes upon that bridge, the width of the bridge becomes, as it were, a league, parasang, 9 spears, about 126 English feet, in the Art of Varaf, 5.1, Dadastanda Dinik, 21.5. The parasang is probably used here as equivalent for hatra in a vestin, a mile. Mediation. Because going back, Mithra means something like going between. And it didn't start out as Mithric religion, as you're worshiping it as an intercessor. It just went in between with its tax. Yeah, and being satiated is a very important thing. It actually limits your consumption, being satiated. And the righteous soul passes over with the cooperation of Srosh, the righteous, and his own deeds of a virtuous kind. L19 has his own virtuous deeds. The conscious of the soul meets it in the form of a damsel, beautiful in proportion to the goodness of its deeds, in Ardraf, chapter 4, verses 18 to 36. Dadastani Danik, 24, verse 5, 25, verse 5. The conscious meets the soul before it attempts the bridge. Come to meet him in the form of a maiden, who is handsomer and better than every maiden in the world. And one would presume the male equivalent is there for the female, right? Or the perfection of her husband, maybe. And the righteous soul speaks thus: who mayest thou be? More literally, what may be thou? As the verb is in the third person here, though not so in the similar phrase in verse 169, or in verse 128, that a maiden who is handsomer and better than thee was never seen by me in the worldly existence. In reply, that maiden form responds, thus, I am no maiden, but I am thy virtuous deeds, thou youth who art well-thinking, well-speaking, well-doing, and of good religion. For when thou sawest in the world him who has performed demon worship, then thou hast sat down, and thy performance was the worship of the sacred beings. And when it was seen by thee that there was any one who caused oppression and plunder, and distressed or scorned a good person, and acquired wealth by crime, then thou keptst back from the creatures their own risk of oppression and plunder. The good person was also thought of by thee, and lodging and entertainment provided, and alms were given by thee to him who came forth from near, and him too who was afar, and wealth which was due to honesty was acquired by thee. And when thou sawest him who practiced false justice, and taking of bribes, and false evidence was given by him, then thou hadst sat down, and the recitation of truth and virtue was uttered by thee, meaning probably the recitation of the vested text. And politicians should not bow to their constituents. They should do the best job, regardless of who's paying, what the lobbyists are doing for them, right? Or who's making the donations to their campaign. I mean, sure, they might be able to be good to who's doing that, but, it shouldn't sway their judgment as what they vote for. I am this of thine, the good thoughts, the good words, and the good deeds, which were thought, spoken, and done by thee. For when I have become commendable, I am then made altogether more commendable by thee. When I have become precious, I am then made altogether still more precious by thee. And when I have become glorious, I am then made altogether. K43 emits bara quite altogether in this third clause. Still more glorious by thee. And when he walks onward from there, a sweet-scented breeze comes, then to meet him, which is more fragrant than all perfume. The soul of the righteous inquires of Sorosh, thus, what breeze is this, that never in the world so fragrant a breeze came into contact with me? Then Sorosh, the righteous, replies to that righteous soul thus, this breeze is from heaven, which is so fragrant. Afterwards, on his march, the first step is set. These are the three lowermost grades of heaven, Humat, Hupt, and Huvarst. See chapter 7, 12. On the place of the good thoughts, on the second on that of the good words, the third of that of the good deeds. The highest grade of heaven, where Harmaz and the archangels are supposed to dwell. So you have good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, and, God's more merciful than that, is sort of the implication, right? And altogether, in verse 139, L19 has afterwards he rests on the first step, but Awar Aramed he rests is a misreading of Madame Karamdad on the march is set. Okay, so maybe that's the first step, and the other is the three most grades. The highest grade of heaven, where Harmaz and the archangels are supposed to dwell, is... Okay, and the fourth step reaches up unto the endless light, which is all radiant. Yeah, that's where we're at. And angels and archangels of every description come to meet him, and ask tidings from him. The numbering of the verses per page is sometimes off. The numbering of the footnotes is so I'm trying to get the things. Come to meet him and ask tidings from him. Thus, how hast thou come from that which is a perishable, fearful, and very miserable existence, to this which is an imperishable existence, that is undisturbed, thou youth who art well-thinking, well-speaking, well-doing, and of a good religion, then Harmaz, the Lord speaks. Thus, ask ye from him no tidings, for he has parted from that which was a precious body, and is come by that which is a fearful road, and bring ye unto him the most agreeable of edibles, that which is the mid-spring butter, the Ma'yo Zarm Rogan, which is explained in Data Standing Unique 31:14 as a spiritual representative of butter made during the Ma'yo Zaramaya Mid-Verjur Festival. Ma'yo Zarm Rogan, Ma'yo Zaremaya, which was considered the best of the year. The festival is held on the 45th day of the Parsi year, so, about May 5th or 6th, right? Which was about the 4th of May. So, yeah, it's closer to cross quarter. But, see, that varies per year, whether it's the mid-day or night or not. It's usually the 5th or the 6th at the sunset is that cross quarter night. When the year was fixed to begin at the vernal equinox is described in Bundahis 25, verses 3 to 7, and verse 20. The heavenly food which goes by this name is not to be confounded with the hush, which is expected to be prepared at the resurrection from the fat of the ox, havagios, and the white home, for the purpose of making mankind immortal. See Bundahis 30, verse 25, although some such confusion appears to exist in the Art of Varoth, chapter 10:5. Well, different opinions coming through different strains of tradition representing the same thing. K43 has Ruban soul instead of Rogan butter, so that he may rest his soul from that bridge of the 3 nights into that which he came from, Asto Vidad and the remaining demons. See verses 114 to 123. Thus ends verse 153. And seat him upon the all-embellished throne, as it is declared that unto, K43 emits unto, the righteous man, literally male, and woman, after passing away. L19 adds from the body and consciousness. They bring food, reading Kazag instead of Kazad, both here and in the next clause of the sentence. L19 has the angels of the spiritual existences bring the most agreeable of edibles by omitting the first Kazag and misreading the second one. The most agreeable of edibles, the food of the angels of the spiritual existences, that which is the mid-spring butter. K43 has Ruban again, as in verse 152 for Rogan, although the sentence resembles Hun 2, verses 38 and 39, it is evidently quoted from some other source, as its difference is more striking than its resemblance. And they seat them down on an all-embellished throne. Forever and everlasting they remain in all glory with the angels of the spiritual existences everlastingly. And when he who is wicked dies, his soul then rushes about for 3 days and nights in the vicinity of the head of that wicked one, and sobs. This verb is the huzvaris, Bakuned, the Pazan Giryed, but Nerio Song has read Bangined, laments, and has written Vagned. Thus, whither do I go, and now, what do I make as a refuge? Or it may be take, as these two verbs are written alike in Husvaris. This exclamation is a quotation from the Gathas, or sacred hymns, being the first line of Yasna 45, verse 1. And the sin and crime of every kind that were committed by him in the worldly existence he sees with his eyes in those 3 days and nights. The 4th day, Vizarash, the Avestan Vizarasha of Vendidad, 1994, who carries off the souls of the wicked. He is also mentioned in Bundahis 28, verse 18, Darastandi Benik 32, verse 4 and 7, 37, verse 44, reading Sar Yatar Sulan. L19 has Vad Bond, an evil tie. The demon comes and binds the soul or the wicked with every evil noose, and with the opposition of Srosh, the righteous, he leads it up to the Kinvar bridge. See verse 115. Then Rashnu, see verse 229 and 120. The just detects that soul of the wicked through its wickedness. Afterwards, Vizarash, the demon, takes that soul of the wicked and mercilessly and maliciously beats and maltreats it. And that soul of the wicked weeps with a loud voice, is fundamentally horrified. Instead of Burrs von Giha, that Kuned, Bun Ramed, L19 has Buraza von Deha Vagined, U Varamed, loudly shrieks and weeps, implores with many supplicating, reading Lapako Kariha, entreaties, and makes many struggles for life disconnectedly. Instead of Apad Vandiha, L19 has Apatu Eha, fruitlessly. Entreaties, and makes many struggles for life disconnectedly. Okay, I already did that. Whom L19 has and. When his struggling and supplication are of no avail whatever, and no one comes to his assistance from the divinities, Bagan, L19 has Viha, the good, nor yet from the demons, moreover, Vizarash, the demon, drags miserably to the inevitable hell. Instead of Ak, Hamandiha, L19 has Ana Amedaha, hopelessly, so miserable, hopelessly into the inevitable, reading Nagirs instead of inevitable, but this is uncertain. L19 has Azer lower. You know, there's different degrees of reward and punishment. That's an important thing to get across to people. Hell. And then a maiden who is not like unto maidens comes to meet him, and that soul of the wicked speaks to that evil maiden. Thus, who mayest thou be, that never in the worldly existence was an evil maiden seen by me, who was viler and more hideous than thee? And she speaks in reply to him. L19 has that evil maiden. Thus, I am not a maiden, but I am thy deeds. L19 has evil deeds. Thou monster, who art evil thinking, evil speaking, evil doing, and of evil religion. For even when thou sawest, L19 adds, in the world, him who performed the worship of the sacred beings, still then thou hast sat down, and demon worship was performed by thee, and the demons and fiends were served. And also when thou sawest him, provided lodging and entertainment, and gave alms for a good person, who came forth from near, and him too, who was from afar. In L19, the words near and afar change places. Then thou actest scornfully and disrespectfully to the good person, and gave no alms, and even shut up the door. And when thou sawest him who practiced true justice, took no bribe, gave true evidence, and uttered virtuous recitation, even then thou hast sat down, and false justice was practiced by thee, evidence was given by thee with falsehood, and vicious recitation was uttered by thee. I am this of thine, the evil thoughts, the evil words, and the evil deeds which were thought and spoken and done by thee. For when I have become uncommendable, I am then made altogether still more uncommendable by thee. When I have become unrespected, I am then made altogether still more unrespected by thee. And when I have sat in an I-offending position, I am then made altogether still more really I-offending. Kashem ka iktar ek, by thee. Literally I-consuming, instead of I-offending. The reading adopted by Ner Yosang, but though it gives a satisfactory meaning, it is not quite certain that it represents the Pahlavi text correctly. In L19, the words near and far change places. Who was from far, verse 174. Okay. Afterwards he enters. For den vaz luned, he goes in. Or maybe it's for den vaz luned, rather than for being English or transliterating here, right? Or are we not? Den vaz luned. L19 has undar Sroved, indicating that the first letter Va of Vazlunet has been omitted in the Pahlavi manuscripts used by Neryosong, which misled him into reading the remaining letters as a new Pazand verb, Zroved, as already by Noldek in Goat Gel Ans 1882, page 975. Oh, I forgot that already. I forgot some of the abbreviations. You should, in the footnotes, just name the source. Don't give like 3-letter things. Learn these 2 pages before reading my book. Afterwards he enters, the first step on the place of evil thoughts, the second on that of evil words, the third step on that of evil deeds. These are the 3 uppermost grades of hell: Dus Humat, Dus Hukt, and Dus Huvarst, see chapter 720. And the 4th step rushes into the presence of the wicked evil spirit and the other demons in the lowest grade of hell, see chapter 7, verse 21. And the demons make ridicule and mockery of him. Thus, what was thy trouble and complaint as regards Uharmazd, the Lord, and the archangels, and the fragrant and joyful heaven, when thou approachest for a sight of Aharman, and the demons and gloomy hell, although we cause thee misery therein, and do not pity, and thou shalt see misery of long duration, and the evil spirit shouts to the demons, thus ask ye no tidings from him, who is parted from. L19 has, for he has parted from, as in verse 151, or in verse 189, that which was a precious body, and has come on by that which is a very bad road. But bring ye unto him the foulest and vilest of edibles, the food which is nurtured in hell. They bring the poison and venom of. L19 has and the snake, and scorpion, and other noxious creatures that are in hell, and give him to eat, and until the resurrection and future existence he must be in hell, in much misery and punishment of various kinds. L19 has he is in much misery and punishment of kinds worthy of hell, especially that it is possible to eat food there only as though by similitude. So that starvation is one of the punishments of hell. L19 has, and especially that the food there can only be like putrid blood. The spirit of innate wisdom spoke to the sage. Thus, this which was asked by thee as to the maintenance of the body and concerning the preservation of the soul is also spoken about by me, and thou art admonished. Be virtuously assiduous about it, and keep it in practice, for this is thy chief way for the maintenance of the body and preservation of the soul. And going back, like similitude, okay, starvation's punishment of hell, L19 has especially that the food there can only be putrid blood. Oh, okay, we're having two notes listed as the same. I don't know why we only have one thing. Maybe in the original they listed something more so, right?